up, everyone? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we'll be reacting to the top 10 best nicknames in NASCAR. I don't know any nicknames in NASCAR, so this is going to be a great video for me. It was requested by one of my Patreon members. Yeah, like I said, I don't know any of them, so am I going to get thrown into something completely new here? Yes, and I'm so here for it. So I'm just going to shut up and we'll get straight into it.
Throughout all of sports history, the greatest and most beloved athletes have always had the best nicknames. Michael Air Jordan, Wayne Gretzky, the Great One, Anderson the Spider Silva, and so many others. NASCAR has its own cast of legends with equally great nicknames. Some tell you everything you need to know about a driver. Others are curious to say the least. Some drivers love theirs and others hate them. Whatever the case may be, here's my list of the top 10 best nicknames in NASCAR history.
I only know Dale's and Chastain's.
Number 10, Mark the Kid Martin. Hailing from Batesville, Arkansas, Mark got his start racing late models all over the state's vibrant short track scene during the 70s. Then just a teenager, Mark was seen as just some kid who was into his head. At the time, the general consensus was that racing was more about accrued skill rather than raw talent. A lot of people thought the only way to get good at racing was with time and practice, but Mark started winning right off the bat. Eventually, he gained a reputation for winning everything in sight, and his older competitors would derogatorily call him that kid from Batesville. The name stuck, and as he made his NASCAR debut in the early 80s, he kept being called the Kid. However, after his career got derailed because of some sponsorship issues, Mark fell off the map and would eventually re-emerge in 1988. When he won his first race in 1989, he was 30 and the name didn't fit anymore. But Mark wasn't done. He continued winning races for 20 more years. For his 40s and 50s, the nickname got dusted off and used again, this time as a tongue-in-cheek joke about his agelessness. Mark scored his final NASCAR victory at age 52 in the Xfinity Series and got his last pole position at age 54. He might be in his 60s now, but the kid is still forever young at heart. Number 9, Terry Labonte, the Iron Man, aka
Iron
the
Man.
Iceman. I couldn't figure out which one I liked better, so I went ahead and used both of them. Whether we're referring to ice or iron, both are uniquely fitting for Terry. The elder of the Labonte brothers, Terry started his first full-time season in 1979 and did not miss a single start until 2000 due to dizziness from a concussion he suffered the week prior. With 655 consecutive starts, that was a NASCAR record at the time. And he actually took the record back in 1996 and just kept adding on to it. When he finally broke the record for consecutive starts then, he won the race and did it in style, driving a raw brushed stainless steel car, thus earning him the nickname, the Iron Man. But before Terry was known as the Iron Man, he was known as the Iceman.
Okay, that's my favorite one so far.
And when he did, it was all business, devoid of emotion. Most drivers today like to use the radio as a means to vent their frustration, but Terry just stayed cool, calm, and collected. In the 2000s, it became commonplace for broadcasters to dial up a driver and talk to them during cautions or red flags. Normally, the commentator would check the mic to make sure they had the driver, asking, "Hey, this is so-and-so with Fox Sports up in the booth, you got me?" Most drivers would respond and say, "Oh yeah, sure, how's it going up there?" and make small talk. Labonte, however, would not respond verbally. Instead, he turned his radio button on and then back off, leaving an audible click over the channel, as if to say, "Yeah, I can hear you." Why waste time talking when a simple click can do the job just as well, right?
Fair.
That's just the kind of guy Terry Labonte was. And so the Iceman Iron Man sits at 9th on this list. Number 8, the Alabama Gang. This one doesn't refer to one driver or his team, but two distinct groups of 3 men apiece. In the 1960s, the Allison brothers, Bobby and Donnie, moved from Florida to Alabama when they found out that Alabama short tracks paid way more than their Floridian counterparts. During their move to the state, they met Red Farmer, a mainstay of the Alabama short track scene and a talented driver. Thus, they formed the first triumvirate of the Alabama Gang, Bobby, Donnie, and Red. Later, an up-and-coming racer from Bessemer, Alabama named Neil Bonnet befriended Bobby Allison. And while he scraped his way up the racing ranks, Bobby would let him sleep on his couch just so Neil could save a few bucks on rent. Eventually, he moved up to the top division and took Red Farmer's place as the aging driver scaled back his racing schedule. And as Bobby and Donnie retired in the 80s, Bobby's sons Davey and Clifford joined Neil to form the second triumvirate of the Alabama Gang during the late 80s. All told, the members of the Alabama Gang won hundreds of races and tons of accolades over the years. Whatever form the power trio took, they were sure to show up and win big. No matter where you came from or where the race was being held, the Alabama Gang were the guys you had to watch out for. Number 7, Gentleman Ned Jarrett. Being known as the quintessential gentleman driver of NASCAR is a big title to shoulder, but Ned Jarrett fits the bill pretty darn well. Jarrett rarely, if ever, got into any confrontations with anyone. He was a clean racer at a time when nearly all of his competitors were looking to beat and bang at the drop of a hat, and his gentlemanly approach paid off. Jarrett won the NASCAR Cup Series title twice and then respectfully bowed out from full-time competition. The way he saw it, he just didn't have anything left to prove. But just because he was nice on and off the track didn't mean that he wouldn't race hard. He holds the record for the largest margin of victory at 14 full laps.
I love those kinds of races where they're like really nice, but then once they're on the track,
won by nearly 19 miles.
Race as hard as possible.
And that wasn't even close to the only time he curb stomped the field. Gentleman Jarrett was one of the most well-respected men in the garage, but he found his true calling anytime he had a mic in his hand. Whether in the pits or in the booth, Jarrett was one of the best commentators NASCAR ever saw. With his pleasant demeanor, he had a way of getting information out of drivers that few possessed, and that made him an instant hit on TV. Whether you're in showbiz or the racing biz, it apparently pays to be a gentleman. Number 6, Cale Yarborough, Old Hickory. Hailing from Timminsville, South Carolina, Cale Yarborough was as tough and stubborn as an old hickory stump, thus the nickname. He asked no quarter of his competitors and none was given. He'd beat and bang with his opponents even to his own detriment sometimes. That's just how hard-headed he was. Whether he was going door-to-door with the great Richard Petty or a young up-and-coming Darrell Waltrip, he treated them all equally by being just as cutthroat with either of them. It didn't matter who you were or what you had done. If you were in Old Hickory's way, then he'd make sure to let you know that he was not happy about it. In an era of drivers taking disputes to the garage and settling things with their fists there, Cale would just throw hands right there on the track in front of God and everybody. He just did not care. His toughness was never in question either. After flying over the wall at Darlington in 1965, everybody feared that he was severely injured or worse. But after emerging from his wrecked car, he just calmly walked to the pits and seemed more annoyed.
No way! Even back then, with not like none of the safety that they have now.
Number 5, Rowdy Kyle Busch. Kyle has gone through several nicknames over the years: Wild Thing for his reckless driving style, Shrub because he's the younger of the Busch brothers, and the Candyman because of his sponsors M&M, Skittles, and Twix. But the one that stuck was Rowdy. He got this from his time spent running the truck series on the side, where he raced for Billy Ballou and the number 51 truck, which had the same number and font as Rowdy Burns' car from the movie Days of Thunder. So technically it's a borrowed nickname from a work of fiction, but I'm going to count it because if anybody deserves to take the title of Rowdy, it's Kyle Busch. Kyle will wreck you under caution, fight you right in front of an official, or just flat
I love Days of Thunder, are you kidding?
At some point. But it's not all bad because the guy is an absolute wheelman. He can save a car like nobody else and constantly gets the most out of his equipment at all times. There is never any question that he's driving at 100% all the time. Love him or hate him, there is no doubt when Rowdy is on the entry list, it's going to be an exciting day at the track and must-watch TV. Number 4, Bill Elliott, Awesome Bill from Dawsonville. Bill Elliott is NASCAR's perennial most popular driver.
Quite a long nickname.
And he has a few other nicknames like Million Dollar Bill and George's Favorite Son, but this name tops them all for one simple reason. It rhymes. That's an instant top 10. Not only does it rhyme, but the things he did actually were awesome in every respect. He earned the first $1 million paycheck in NASCAR history, won 2 Daytona 500s, came back from 2 laps down to win at Talladega while under green. He ran the fastest qualifying lap ever, won 11 races in a 29-race season in 1985, and that's just scratching the surface.
Wow.
As awesome as he was, what made him so popular was just how soft-spoken and reserved he was. He never got cocky or arrogant. He just kept with the attitude of, "Oh, shucks, I'm just happy to be here," and people loved it. He won the most popular driver award 16 times in a row.
16 times in total. That is crazy.
But what won him even more respect was that he stayed at home in Dawsonville throughout his career, making sure to put his small hometown on the map in NASCAR lore forever. Not only did the name rhyme, but it was 100% accurate. What more could you possibly want? Number 3, David Pearson, the Silver Fox.
Silver Fox.
David Pearson didn't just get the nickname the Silver Fox on account of his early graying hair. His red and silvered number 21 machine made him a legend during the 1970s.
Wow.
Pearson had originally drove the blue number 17, but after he won 3 championships in it, he scaled back to part-time competition, and now only driving the big events.
That must be so weird going to a museum after you've retired from NASCAR,
driving style on top of
and
that,
the car that you drove is in the museum.
At the 1974 Firecracker 400, he had Richard Petty right behind him on the final lap, and Petty was in position to get into David Pearson's draft and slingshot around him. But Pearson pulled to the inside and slowed down as though his car had some sort of mechanical failure. However, he was just playing possum. He tucked in right behind Petty and used his draft to pass Richard on the last straightaway and won the race.
Wow.
Perhaps even more devious was when he won the 1976 World 600. Since it was America's bicentennial and the race was held on Memorial Day, track owner Bruton Smith offered up a top-of-the-line motorboat to whoever led the 76th lap. Pearson won the pole, bided his time, got his strategy right, charged to the front to win the motorboat, faded back to mid-pack, and then charged back up to the front in the latter stages of the race to win the whole thing. That's just how the Silver Fox raced. He didn't give a rip about leading the most laps, just about leading the ones that mattered. And apparently it worked out for him. He sits at second on the all-time wins list in the Cup Series at 105. Number 2, the King, Richard Petty. Sitting at number 1 on the all-time wins list, however, is Richard Petty at 200. Throughout the 60s and 70s, King Richard I won everything in sight. Whether it was some tiny dirt track in the middle of nowhere or a crown jewel event televised in front of millions, Richard Petty was there to win them all. He won an unthinkable 7 championships at a time when nobody else had more than 3. He He won 7 Daytona 500s when nobody else had more than 4 to their credit.
7 Daytona 500s.
He just completely obliterated the competition at every turn. If anybody should ever earn the nickname The King, Richard Petty was the guy. You name a record and he has it. Most wins, most starts, most top 5s, most top 10s. Whatever it is, Richard Petty is there to claim the crown. And what's even crazier, with the exception of Kyle Busch, he has raced against every single person on this list and bested them on the track at some point. With a career that spans from 1959 to 1992, he saw just about every major milestone in the sport's history, and more often than not, he was directly involved in it. Wow. And the King was not resented by the NASCAR fan base either. Richard
oh my
Petty
god,
had
that's
to earn
crazy
his
footage
wins.
there.
Guys like Benny Parsons, David Pearson, Bobby Isaac, and Cale Yarborough, among many others, did not give him an inch. They threw everything at him and the King won anyway. Leaving no room for doubt, the King's subjects always adored him. If there was ever
King's
a patriarch
subjects.
in NASCAR, then this is the guy. All hail King Richard, the first of his name, protector of the good years and defender of the cup. Long may he reign. And before we get to number 1 on this list, let's give a nod to some honorable mentions. Kyle Young Money Larson.
Oh, I've
Carl
heard that
Long,
one.
The Long Shot. Jerry Nadeau, the Fury from Danbury. 7-time Jimmy Johnson. The Gentle
Yeah, I've heard
Giant,
that.
Buddy Baker. Wonder Boy, Jeff Gordon.
Wonder
Rocket,
Boy.
Ryan Newman. Front Row, Joe Nemechek. Concrete, Carl Edwards. And finally, Tony Stewart, a.k.a. Smoke. And number 1, Dale Earnhardt Sr., the
I was going to
Intimidator.
say, I've
This is the
heard
nickname that defined
the
Big E
Intimidator
for the
before.
majority of his career in NASCAR's top division. He grew up watching his father Ralph Earnhardt bump and run on tiny dirt tracks, and Dale took that tactic to new heights as he would bump and run drivers on all manner of tracks, big and small, road course and oval. That driving style made him a lot of enemies, but try as they might, they couldn't best Earnhardt when the chips were down. He was never dubbed the Intimidator, though, until 1988, when he changed sponsors from Wrangler Jeans to GM Goodwrench, and the sponsor requested an all-black paint scheme with silver highlights. Thus, the man in black became the Intimidator. And the name fit him perfectly. It told you everything you needed to know about him. If Dale filled up your rearview mirror, he was just as likely to make a legitimate pass
Every
as he was
video
to
I
just
see
punt
on
you out of
him,
the way.
I'm like more
Guys
amazed
would dive out
and
of the way
stunned.
the moment that big black number
Just
3
incredible.
machine rolled up on him, because they knew what would happen if they didn't. Oftentimes, Dale had no intention of dumping someone, but his sheer reputation was enough to cause guys to overthink things and make mistakes. Perhaps his most infamous moment was the 1987 All-Star race, in which he had run-ins with Jeff Bodine and Bill Elliott, and of course the famous pass in the grass. He was an absolute wild man that day, and half the NASCAR fan base loved him and the other half hated him.
Yeah.
When I went to races in the 90s as a kid, he got booed more than any other driver, bar none. But
That is
still, he
nuts.
trudged on to victory after victory, championship after championship. The Intimidator was not there to play nice, and it apparently paid off.
That was crazy. There are a couple of them there that I had heard before, but I had just forgotten. So I had heard Dale as the Intimidator. I was going to say Chastain's was like the Hail Melon, but I don't know whether that's his nickname, but that's what they call like the move that he did. So I didn't know if we'd class it as a nickname, but that's what I was thinking of at the beginning of the video. I'd heard Larson's Young Money before because I've heard them say it in like the dirt racing videos that I've seen. 7-time for Jimmy Johnson, because I think I've done a video on Jimmy Johnson, they mentioned it there. But other ones I hadn't really heard of. But my favourite ones would probably be Rowdy for Kyle Busch, just because I watched Days of Thunder and it was incredible and I love that movie. So I like that one. And Iron Man or Iceman or whatever, that was a good one. But yeah, I really enjoyed that video. So thank you to my Patreon members for requesting this video. And with that being said, if you have any other videos that you'd like me to react to, drop them in the comments. I'm working my way through everybody's suggestions at the moment. If you did want to check out any of my other socials or become a Patreon member and get early access to videos like this or top priority over your suggestions, then you can do all of that down below. But I hope you enjoyed today's reaction and I will catch you next time for the next one. Bye.